Hi guys, Michael Abayemi here, and today I'm doing a review and a recap of the 5th episode of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Needless to say, we'll be touching upon spoilers for the episode, so make sure you've seen the episode before you watch this video if you don't want to get spoiled. And with that out of the way, let's get on with the episode. So the 5th episode of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier pretty much starts where the last one left off, with the new Captain America, John Walker, having to face the aftermath of his actions at the end of the last episode. The episode basically started with him on the run, running away from his actions, while Sam and Bucky track him down to an abandoned warehouse. So and here, it was clear that the confrontation that was hinted at in the last trailer we got was about to take place, and you could see how Sam and Bucky were still trying to reason with him, and he was so adamant, John Walker was so adamant that what he had done was basically what he thought was the right thing. And the moment Sam asked for the shield back, that was what really triggered him. And eventually a big fight breaks off and the three of them are in this scuffle, and you could see that even the fact that they were like, it was two of them against one, you could still see that he was still holding his own. He was still going toe to toe with the two of them. But of course, it's only a matter of time before they were able to overpower him, but it wasn't without casualties, as Sam got the wings of his suit broken off, and even Bucky sustained some damage to his arm as well. But they were basically able to overpower him and take the shield back, after which Bucky hands it over to Sam. In the next scene, we get to see the full extent of the repercussions of John Walker's actions, as he has to stand before a government committee to face sentencing. And as punishment for his actions, he was to be stripped of the title of Captain America immediately, as well as discharged from active service in the military. And you could see him trying to explain his actions and reason with them, but they were not having it. They basically had already decided that this was the course of action to take, and so his pleas were more or less falling on deaf ears. But in the very next scene, we see him being consoled by his wife when a woman called Valentino comes over and introduces herself, and apparently she's some kind of power player. So in any case, she tells him that she's very much on his side and she very much understands what he's going through, that in fact most of the people in the room that gave that sentencing actually agreed with what he did. It was just unfortunate that he was caught on camera, and the only way they can keep their hands clean in the situation is to try and distance themselves as far as possible, which is why he was now taking the fall for everything that happened. So but she tells him that she's aware that he had taken the super soldier serum and he actually had some abilities that could be useful, and she encourages him to answer her call whenever she reaches out to him. So this is more or less like a thread that is being laid for future appearances in the movies, because this woman being a power player in the comic books is obviously going to have a big impact in the movies going forward, similar to how Nick Fury was behind the scenes pulling the strings and everything. So she's also that kind of power player in the overall MCU. Next, we get a scene with Kali and the Flag Smashers, who had more or less retreated after the aftermath of the previous episode. And here they get to learn that the GRC had gone out to shut down all their safe havens. So the place where they were being harbored by citizens had been shut down, and at this point, Kali had to make that decision to make a final stance. And it was clear that after everything that has happened, they were going to double down and they were really going to go after the GRC in a very big way, which was eventually revealed later on in the episode. Then we eventually get a scene between Bucky and Zemo after Bucky successfully tracks him down after fleeing at the end of the last episode. But the way the scene was being played out, it made it look like Bucky was about to execute Zemo, only for them to reveal that he was merely handing him over to the Dormalaji, who their plan was to lock him up in the rafts. The raft being a high security prison system where they keep super villains. So this as well is more or less setting up a future appearance for Zemo in future movies in the MCU, because the raft being where they keep all those super villains, you can just tell that Zemo, being a man of his mental caliber, he was going to come up with a plan to team up with some of those villains and eventually wreak some havoc further down the line in the MCU. So it'd be nice to see how that eventually happens down the line, but it was a bit sad to see him say goodbye in this episode, and a part of me actually wished that they had saved this scene for the final episode, because right now we're going into the final episode without any expectation of getting to see him again, which he had actually grown to become one of our favorite characters overall. So, and in one of the most pivotal scenes in the episode, we get to see Sam pay Isaiah another visit after the last episode where he had gone there and he had been kicked out. You could still tell that he still harbored so much resentment to both the government and everything the government represented. Because Sam went to him with the shield, and the way Isaiah even acted beside the shield, it was like he didn't even need to see it, that Sam didn't need to bring it out or anything like that. So, and he went on to narrate his story. And as it turns out, his story actually mirrors the story of Steve Rogers. Because if you can remember, in the first Captain America movie, Captain America: The First Avengers, Steve Rogers had saved a bunch of soldiers that were being held behind enemy lines, defying like orders from his higher-ups to do so. And after that, he was hailed as a hero. And we now find out that Isaiah had been in a similar situation where he had to go and save some of his comrades. But instead of receiving a hero's welcome, he was actually imprisoned for his actions. And this was where all the experimentation began, where they started to take his blood to see if they could replicate the super soldier serum and his abilities. So it was quite sad to see that two characters in the MCU could go through two similar experiences but come out with two very different outcomes. So basically, they were just trying to say how things are not always the same, like how there's still very much a lot of racial prejudice, even in the context of the MCU, like how the world as it is now is not yet ready for a black Captain America, which, looking at the show as a whole, it's still very much about Sam accepting to become the next Captain America. But Isaiah is this man that has a lot of doubts that the world as it is actually ready for a black Captain America. So I actually think at the end of the show, we're going to see that transition from Sam being skeptical in the beginning to him fully being committed to taking up that mantle as Captain America. Except they're willing to throw a curveball. But I actually think that's the trajectory the show is currently on, and it would be nice to see how it actually plays out in the last episode. So the next scenes in the episode were more chill and laid back, as we got to see Sam go back home to his sister and his family, and you could still see they still had all the financial troubles they had at the start of the show, like with their boats, the family boats and everything. So Sam comes up with an idea of a way to raise enough money to fix the boats, which was by asking people in their neighborhood who their parents had helped out over the years to pitch in so that they can be able to do something about the boats. And this turns out to be a successful plan, and the part that actually nudged the whole scene to a higher level was when we saw Bucky actually come down to help as well. And this was easily the best part of the episode in my opinion. The interaction between Bucky and Sam, like just having the two of them having to face this mundane task, and at the same time still knowing that they had the threat of the Flag Smashers hanging in the balance, hanging over their heads, and they still had all these things that they still needed to deal with, plus even their differences. Because if you can remember earlier in episode 2, they had like these arguments where they actually agreed to go their separate ways once they were done with the Flag Smasher threats and everything. So this was like them coming to terms with one another and actually seeing each other as brothers and everything. And also this was Bucky trying to encourage Sam to take up the responsibility, and we could even see Sam begin to start training with the shield, the Captain America shield. And this was like Sam basically accepting to become the next Captain America. This was him training to fill those shoes left behind by Steve Rogers, and you could really see him with the training going all out. And at the end of everything, it was clear that he had already made his decision, but obviously the arc is yet to be completed. We still need to wait until the next episode before we see what his actual decision is going to be. But with the way everything is being telegraphed, it's quite clear that this is the direction that we're headed. Then in one of the closing scenes for the episode, we get to see Carly team up with Batroc. Batroc, who you remember had made an appearance in the first episode of the show before he was eventually apprehended by Sam. And it was shown that they were about to stage a terrorist attack on the GRC, who are about to like pass a very important vote. This important vote is where it's going to be decided on a government level that they're going to send everybody back to their respective countries. So, and here we could see them teaming up with Batroc, and earlier in the episode, we actually got a scene with Sharon, who everybody still thinks is the power broker. But after this scene, it was looking all but confirmed, because we could see her making a phone call, which at the end of the day, we found out it was actually Batroc she was trying to like get out. So, but the implication here would be that she's trying to help the Flag Smashers, which wouldn't really make any sense if she's the power broker, because the Flag Smashers actually stole from her. So I actually think this is her trying to like get close enough to Carly to inflict some damage. So maybe Batroc is acting as a double agent in this sense, just to be able to like get to Carly and eventually stop her. So, but we won't know how it's going to go down until we see the next episode. But this is something I'm looking forward to seeing. So overall, I would say that this penultimate episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was more or less set up for the final episode. You could see all the chess pieces being moved into place and everything being set up for what is going to be like that final confrontation. And we even actually got a post-credit scene, the very first one for the show, where we actually see John Walker, who after being disgraced and stripped of his mantle of Captain America, still believes that it is his duty and his right to hold that title. And you could see him in this post-credit scene forging a makeshift shield of his own. So obviously it is clear that there's going to be like this major confrontation between Sam and John and even the Flag Smashers, everybody coming to a collision course for this final episode. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of it plays out in the next episode. But if I was to rate this episode, I would actually rate it a 9 out of 10, my highest rating for the show thus far. Like I said, this episode pretty much sets up the final episode nicely, and I'm actually hyped to see where they take us in that final episode. But these are just my thoughts about the episode. What did you think about this episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed watching this review, and to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on if you'd like to see more reviews like this in the future. And until the next one, this is Michael signing off.